What's going on, lads and lassies? It's Ocean from the South Stand, back again with another video. And finally, international break's over. Come on. I don't know about anyone else. I'm not massively, particularly fond of international breaks. Partly because of the injuries, and we'll get into that. But second of all, just because it's just so much, isn't it? All these World Cup qualifiers and this and that. I don't know. It's probably a bit of a Scottish thing. We've never really been involved in these conversations, so whatever. But Sunderland are back from international break for their first home fixture in 3 games, which is very exciting to be back at the Stadium of Light. I think it's where Sunderland are bound to perform best this season, and we've seen it. 2 games won, 1 game drawn. It's We're so far undefeated at the Stadium of Light, and I'd like to keep that going this weekend against Wolves. Coming into a massive game for both teams, of course, Sunderland are looking at building on their strong start this season so far before some of those fixtures get a lot tougher. We come into that AFCON period where we're facing a lot of the big boys, with some of our squad definitely going to be missing. So we need to keep getting the points on whilst we can and take advantage of the fixtures in front of us right now. And Wolves come in, of course, sitting 20th place on just 2 points. After extending the contract of Vitor Pereira, I think this will be one that they'll see as a chance to try and get their first win of the season. And all hasn't been lost at Wolves. I think, especially in the last couple of games, we've seen the improvements they've been managed to make with the return of Strand Larsen as well, who's always going to be a threat for Wolves. They've got to start getting points at some point, and we know as Sunderland fans that too often that tends to be Sunderland that they start getting their points against. But yep, as I said, we're coming into a home fixture. Sunderland will be looking to extend that undefeated start at the Stadium of Light. Now, as I alluded to in the intro, Wolves have only managed to get 2 points so far this season, having dropped 2 points in the final 10 minutes against Brighton before the international break. That's a game where Wolves led pretty much the whole game right up until the 80th minute, and they managed to let Brighton get back into things from a set piece. And it's been a tough start to the year for them, but I think without someone like Strand Larsen starting for them for a number of weeks, it was always going to be a little bit tougher. And I think, although yes, you can make this excuse for anyone, I don't think the Wolves games have always been as bad as what the league position makes out, but they have had some undeniable stinkers. So, but yeah, I think in that game against Man City, they got leathered 4-1, and really for the first half, they looked alright. Then you see the last 2 games where they've only managed to come out with a point, and again for both games, they looked alright. I don't want that to start changing against Sunderland though. And this change for them in form seemed to come from what I can see when they switched from a back three to a back four now instead. And that the last time they played with that back three was when they played against Leeds and managed to concede 3 goals. So I don't think they'll be looking to concede another 3 goals from a newly promoted sides again. But they are 6 for XG against. Now, I know everyone's not a massive fan of XG stats, but I think it does point in the direction of what you can kind of expect. And when they're 6 worst for expected goals against, that really puts them down there and amongst the strugglers, conceding 1.9 goals on average and only having an expected goal of just over 1. It doesn't make great readings for Wolves fans. I mean, they currently are sat 18th in terms of goals conceded. So a bit of an imposing record, especially when it comes to maybe how Sunderland have got off and their good start with 3 clean sheets and managed to keep their defences like their main asset. Definitely been a little bit trickier for Wolves, but one player that I have been really impressed with for them, who's only just started, I think, 4 games for them this season, is Krejci. And as a centre half, I think he most resembles the kind of centre half that we've had in play. He has actually what I think is very interesting. When they were playing at a 3 at back, he was actually playing in midfield, and then when they changed to the back 4, he dropped into that back line. And for me, he's been very impressive for Wolves so far this season in his ability to help an attack. We've seen him already score a goal this season, so for someone who's going to play at centre back, always good to have a threat that they can go on and help your attack as well. But not only that, his ball passing, his ability to help his other players get up the field, his aerial domination, he's got a pretty good record so far in his time at Wales. And for me, having watched a few of their games in anticipation for this one this weekend, I think for me he's been a standout in his first few weeks there. So I think they've got themselves a winner with him, and he has really impressed me so far this season. And again, with the return of Strand Larsen, they have been able to start making more chances in the last few weeks. Even if you take that game against Brighton, Strand Larsen himself hit the woodwork, and he also had a couple more really good chances as well. So although that game ended 1-1, I think Wolves had plenty of opportunities to put themselves further ahead. They just couldn't take it at that time. Now that is at home. Their away record hasn't been excellent by any means so far this season either, having drawn one and lost two games away from home. So let's hope that that form continues when they come to the Stadium of Light. But we know from previous experience, I don't know, we seem to fix that for other teams, don't we? Now, from a Sunderland point of view, we're coming off the back of what for me was the worst first half or any half of football we played this season, in that first half against Man United at Old Trafford. In previous years gone past, I think it was a super easy one just to move on from. You go, yep, no problem. Man United, you were never going to get anything there anyway. And I think to some degree that is true this time round. I still don't feel particularly hurt by it, but I just think that Regis could have done better when it came to that starting lineup. And I think we've really got to work on finding that balance amongst the starters, which for me just was not there in that last game against United. And of course, we've got some tricky selection problems when it comes to the fact that Habib Diarra is of course going to be out for another at least a month. And then you look at Ronaldo Mandava, who's still out for one more game after that stupid red card against Matty Cash a few weeks ago. So that does make things trickier for Sunderland. And then you compound that with the fact that Noah Siddiqui seems to have been injured in his international break, in his time away with his international team, the DR Congo. Now, that is a problem for Sunderland. We don't. I'll give you the heads up. I am filming this on Tuesday morning, so still a little bit unaware of what that means for Sunderland in terms of Siddiqui. We don't know if he'll manage to make it back in time. But with an ankle sprain, I am going to assume that he will at least miss. That he will at least miss the Wales game. He did miss out, or he didn't play for Congo at all. When you read his Instagram post, he did put a post up after missing out on that game against Congo. He says in that post, "Oh, I was really hoping to be back in time for the game," which kind of alludes to the fact that it's not too serious an injury. But for right now, we don't know how serious it is, and we don't know what the club expect in terms of getting him back on the field. If he's unable to play at the weekend, it is a massive loss for Sunderland, and I'm going to go ahead with the rest of the video, assuming that he's probably not going to play. If he does play, better, even better, it's a bonus. But for right now, I'm going to assume that he's not going to play, just based on the fact that I think they'll want to give him a little bit of rest. And at the end of the day, I guess this is why you build a squad. As I said, this is what our whole summer has led towards, building a squad that's able to roll with the punches. At the end of the day, CDK would be a player that would be leaving us to go to AFCON. So it's got to be a plan that Regis Lebris and the rest of the staff have got to come up with sooner rather than later. So if it's now, let's go for it. I guess there could be worse games for him to be missing against than Wolves. So what does this mean for a game against Wolves? Well, as we've discussed already, Sunderland are undefeated at the Stadium of Light. So far, Wolves have picked up just 1 point on the road, and I think what has been interesting in the manner in which Wolves have given away goals this season is the fact that they've conceded 3 goals after the 70-minute mark. Sunderland have scored 5 goals after the 70-minute mark. If Wolves plan on coming to the Stadium of Light and don't plan on being switched off right until the very last blow of the whistle, I do think they can expect some trouble, because we know from now that late goals and keeping going until the end is part of this Sunderland DNA, and it's definitely something Regis Lebris plans for. So if he knows and he can see that, if he knows and he can see that weakness in Wolves where they're not able to manage games properly, bring on the right substitutions to hold on to a lead, then it's definitely something I think Regis Lebris can punish. And as I said, I think he's definitely got a headache when it comes to his team selection going forward in this game. I think it's clear from the team that we started with at Manchester United that we had plenty in attack, and someone like Traore and Adingra bring you plenty going forward. But it was so unbalanced going back, and it was so unbalanced in defence that he'll have to fix this problem for the game against Wolves this weekend. And for me, that leads us to two main options when it comes to how Sunderland can play. 4-3-3, which is Regis's most common going to starting tactic. Even though Sunderland are fluid and change a lot through different phases of play, it's either going to be 4-3-3 or it's going to be some variation of 3 in the back, which I'm going to lean into a 3-5-2 for that one. So 3 or 4 at the back. I think we've got a question when it comes to Sunderland this weekend. So let's get into what that means. Now, as we spoke about before, I think Regis is the kind of guy who's most likely to stick to what he knows. And so far he's stuck to a 4-3-3, and he has been a little bit reluctant to start any of those games with a back three, even though we as fans are discussing the benefits of being able to have Alderete, Ballard, and Mukiele on the field at the same time in the defensive unit. But instead, we've seen him stick with this 4-3-3 and persist for the last two games to have Masuaku in at left back, which I think is a little bit interesting because if you look at the DR Congo and how they played, Masuaku actually played in midfield for the DR Congo, and there he's been managed to find great success because the defensive duties aren't as tough on. As I've said in previous videos, when we have started with Masuaku at left back, we've had to force extra players to go over there and join him and double up on the opposition and offer him support, which in turn takes away from the way Sunderland are able to play throughout the rest of the field. But in Sunderland's last case, with Adingra starting in the left wing role, it was often Noah Siddiqui going out from the midfield to go and join Arthur, which left a lot of room in the middle for unmarked centre midfielders like Mason Mount to get on the ball. I'll show you some screenshots here of Masuaku and Adingra's heat map compared to Ahmad and Embuemo's, and I think from here it's so obvious to see what we seen as fans in that game last week, where you see that Ahmad and Embuemo are able to occupy so much of that right hand touch side and are really in Sunderland's half with it. And then you see the touches from Adingra and from Masuaku, and almost none of them are in the spots where they should be to be able to defend Masuaku, to be able to defend Embuemo and Ahmad. And it's clear that that was just totally unbalanced when it came to being able to go forward and defend with Adingra and Masuaku on left back. I just don't think this combination worked, and it's clear that Regis didn't agree either, because after 34 minutes he took Adingra off for Dan Ballard, and we ended up switching to that three at the back. As you can see from these heat maps, Ballard, Mukiele and Alderete and Hume are more than capable to then switch into that back three. You can see between the three centre halves there, they're quite comfortably able to cover Sunderland's entire back line, and in turn we're able to push Trey Hume that little bit more forward to then go and join the attack. So if Regis is going to stick with Masuaku, here's how I would try and best combat that 4-3-3. Up on screen here, you'll see where I'm going to put my preferred starting 11 if we're going to stick with a 4-3-3 with Masuaku. Now, I've spoke before in previous games how I myself wouldn't actually start with Masuaku at all. If I was to choose, I would put left back, I would put Hume at left back, Alderete and Ballard in the middle, and Mukiele right back. I just don't know if Regis is really going to push to change a winning formula with Mukiele and Alderete being such a formidable pairing so far in the middle. That would be my actual backline that I would choose in a 4-3-3. But if we assume that Regis Lebris is going to stick with Masuaku at left back, which he has done for the last couple of weeks, then I think to counterbalance Noah Siddiqui's injury, for me I'd be bringing in Geertruida in at centre half, who's shown a great work ethic both on and off the ball so far. I think he can hand back and cover Masuaku the same way we've seen Siddiqui do, or we've seen Siddiqui cover Ronaldo in that left back spot when the bomb forward. But then Geertruida himself, we've seen how he's been able to go with the ball at his feet, dribble past men and get up and in the opposition box. So I do think Geertruida would be the best fitting option to replace Noah Siddiqui in that centre midfield position. Then, given that Regis hooked off Adingra at 34 minutes last week, I think it's unlikely that we see him start again in combination with Masuaku. So instead, I've gone for someone like Enzo Lefebvre, which again, I'll show you some heat maps, which they're not the be all and end all of life, of course they're not. I think people either prefer to look and back their things up with stats. For me, I like to watch football, come to my own conclusions, and then see if the stats are matching what I'm saying. And for what I am saying, you can see it. The way Enzo Lefebvre is able to track back and help out his players, I think he'll massively provide the first port of defence against that left-hand side where we've got Masuaku starting. And this, of course, opens up space in the central midfield, which we're still going to have to cover for Habib Diarra. And for me, I've gone for Chris Rigg over Daniel. So far, we've seen Regis Lebris favour Chris Rigg when it comes to starting in those forward positions. And I think for a number of reasons, Chris can make a good case for himself in that position. I think off the ball, he's got a real understanding of what Regis Lebris is asking for him. And at his age, he's always willing to press and run and just really be a little nuisance for the opposition to deal with. As soon as they get the ball, they're having to think about it because Chris is there. I think that makes him really valuable in this starting lineup. But not even that. Going forward, I think plenty of times we've seen how good Chris Rigg can be as almost a supporting striker. Now, he's never going to be a striker, he's definitely a central midfielder, but I think the way that he pushes up alongside Wilson And I think the way with Chris Rigg, he almost just seems a little bit braver than his counterparts sometimes, in the sense where his youth just makes him a little bit fearless in terms of playing that ball that he's only got a 10% chance of making off. He has shots when he can. He's not afraid to have a shot. He's not afraid to use a little bit of skill to get around someone. And I think that bravery for someone like Chris Rigg really pays off in the way he plays. And we've seen him already. I think he offers something different as a left footer on that right hand side as well, and can really offer a chance to play through Wilson through the centre channels rather than through the wide areas, which I think, of course, is Sunderland's way of playing this year. But just to offer a point of difference, I do think Chris Rigg really does offer that for Sunderland. And then lastly, over on that right hand side, it's got to be Chemstein Talby. Now, I know that Bertrand Traore definitely got himself into some decent positions in attack last week, but for me, what was clear was just the obvious miss of Talby's work rate. We've seen him and he's been happy to jump in at left back to cover. He's been happy to be in right wing. He's happy to be in left wing. He's been no problem going anywhere for Sunderland so far this season. And each time he's worked just as hard in every position. And I think going forward, he's growing week upon week upon week and finding his confidence in the Premier League. So for me, should we have to stick with Masuaku at left back, this would be my 4-3-3 starting 11. As I said before, I wouldn't mind bringing in Ballard and then pushing Mukiele to the right, Trey Hume at left back, and then a centre half pairing of Alderete and Ballard. But I totally understand that it's documented and well said within football that you shouldn't change a winning combination. And so far, Mukiele and Alderete as a centre half pair has been a willing combination. So I wouldn't be surprised to not see that changed. I wouldn't blame anyone for not changing it. But I think for me, the best level of defence we've got is when Trey Hume, Ballard, Alderete, and Mukiele are all in it together. Now here, moving on to the three at the back, I personally have gone for a 3-5-2, and for reasons that I'll get into a little bit later. But from what you can see on screen, here is what I would go for if Sunderland were to play with a three at the back system. I think from what's previously shown on the heat maps that I've shown on screen already, that I might just bring up here, I'm unsure, I might bring them up here for an extra viewing. Hume and Masuaku are more than willing to get forward for Sunderland, and they're quite happy to go down the byline and offer that support. So as wing backs, I don't mind them as options there. Of course, Masuaku you could probably change out for Talby, but I would leave that maybe for a substitution later on in the game. From what you've seen, Masuaku and Hume more than happy to get up and down that byline. And I think in this position it offers natural support from for Masuaku when he is defending, rather than having to pull from other areas and overcompensate for it. A three at the back when you're in a back five defending, then it does offer natural support from him because someone like Omar Alderete can push over to the side. Naturally, a three at the back, 3/5 at the back, is thought of as a more defensive formation. But I think from what we've seen from Sunderland's centre back's ability to move up the field and then Sunderland's fullback ability to move up the field, I don't think it necessarily has to be a defensive, like a overly defensive formation with this Sunderland team. It wouldn't be my first choice, but given Sunderland current availability options, I also wouldn't really mind giving it a go. I think we've seen Alderete in that game against Manchester United and as well as Mukiele in that game against Manchester United. Both of them were happy to step out from the defensive line and offer that support in central midfield again and offered extra bodies. And I think as well, something like this benefits because it gives us the opportunity to have two strikers on the pitch. And we've both seen Eliza Mayenda and Wilson Isidore in that last year, how well they can work together when they're on the field. It's something I've definitely missed. I think they really complement each other as like a little and large duo. And we've seen that on a number of occasions last season in the Championship. Of course, you then ask your questions whether they can make that step up to the Premier League with that formation and with the two of them being on there together. But I think both players work well in the channels, and having two of them up top gives the opportunity for someone like Eliza to drop deep and then start dribbling with it, which we've seen as well and he's good at. We've seen him do well and we've seen him be good at. It gives Wilson the chance to drop off into the left channel rather than being so central all the time. I think it really does offer some fluidity when it comes to Sunderland in attack. And again, it allows someone like Ballard to actually start, which has been one of the hardest things to do this season, is to find a way to get him starting alongside the centre halves that have started so well. But yeah, I don't think with Sunderland it's a particularly defensive. I don't think with Sunderland it has to be kind of only a defensive formation going with three at the back. I think with our particular playing profiles, probably could actually suit us. It just wouldn't be my first choice for Sunderland if we had full fitness. But let me know what you think of both of these teams. What would you prefer to go with? What substitutions would you make within the formations that I've picked out? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And again, going into this one, final thoughts and predictions. I think there's a lot of questions heading into Sunderland this weekend, hoping that Regis can fix mistakes that he made going in to get that game against Manchester United. And I think importantly for both sides, a result is massive. I know for one, I'm looking for Ronaldo being back. I think that solves so many selection headaches just to start with, because that man is a beast at left back. And I also hope that Noah Siddiqui isn't too far behind him. From what we've seen with Noah Siddiqui's Instagram post, it doesn't seem like he was particularly expecting to miss very much football. So at most, I think we'll see him miss the Wolves game and hopefully be back for Everton. But who knows? I'm hoping it's not too much of a problem and that Sunderland can help him recover really quickly. And as I said, I think just more than anything, this is a huge game for both teams. With Sunderland coming into such a tough period of fixtures in the next few weeks, I think it's really important we take points when we can. And as well, I don't think it's ever, I don't think you care what time of year you take points no matter what. With us in 11 points, if we're able to get up to 14, that really makes a massive difference for Sunderland and for a newly promoted club in particular. And as we know, you've got to take points off your competitors, because it's not just about getting 3 points, it's taking away the 3 points and the opportunity to get 3 points from a team like Wolves. Because yes, we're flying high up in ninth at the minute, but that's not necessarily where we're going to finish this year. I think it's far more certain that we'll be involved in some sort of a relegation battle, whether we can kind of finish around 14, 15 comfortably and beat the drop, whether we're a little bit more involved in the drop than it seems like we're going to be just now. We don't really know. So take advantage of the games that you can when you can and let Wolves worry about themselves. But based on Sunderland's strong home record and the fact that in every game Wolves have played so far this season, they've been expected to concede 2 goals and expected to score one. For me, I've got to go for a Sunderland 2-1 win. Strand Larson and Wolves in general have been making enough chances for them to be able to get a goal. But I just think Sunderland, especially knowing those stats when it comes to Wolves' ability to keep the ball at the net in the last 10 minutes, I think Sunderland have got the ability to win this, even if not at full strength. It's about reduce the beast, finding that balance right from the start within the starting squad though. So that's all for today. That's what I think of the Wolves versus Sunderland preview. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think I've done a good job at predicting how we're going to line up in that one? What would you choose, the 3-5-2 or the 4-3-3? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, this one is brought to you by the southstandclothing.com, where you can get yourself sorted with all sorts of Sunderland fanwear, merch, t-shirts, hats, mugs, a lot of them. We've got so much stuff coming out for Christmas as well. So please check out that one. Sign up for the email market and you'll get 20% off, and we'll keep you updated with every new launch anyway. As always, guys, away the lads. Come on.